Good morning. Thank you again for being here. It's hard to believe we're in November already, and it's just nice out, so I guess we'll take it. I'll run through some slides. Once again, if you have any questions, let me know. If you want more specific information, as I mentioned to a few people earlier, I do have some other presentations that I've been working on. And so I have a presentation that I did about sustainability, if you really are interested in that. I'll touch on it a little bit here. And then I'm on a housing panel for the state. They have a convention for WIDA coming up here. So I was one of 3 people that were asked to present for that, to give an update on the housing strategy that we worked on with Dane County. And then I also have some presentations I'm putting together on just growth and what's going on here in Stoughton for Leadership Stoughton. Leadership Stoughton is a class that the Chamber puts on every 2 years, and you can learn all different things about the city of Stoughton, the school district. They go on tours of the buildings. So that's something if you're interested in doing in a couple of years, you can do that through the Chamber. And then we also have a program through the police department where we have the Citizens Police Academy. I know Charles has been through that. That's another one I would recommend if you're looking for something to do on Wednesday nights for a couple months. That's a good program too. You get to ride along with the police officers. You get to go to the gun range. You get to see how the dog works and all sorts of fun stuff. So those are opportunities that are available and free to the public. I'm going to talk a little bit about elections. I'm still getting information from the clerk, even right up to now. So I'll share what I have, and then maybe next month I'll have a little bit more detail. As you know, the election was on Tuesday, and overall things went pretty smoothly. I want to thank those that are in the room that worked at the polls. How many worked at the polls this year? 1. Thank you for doing that. For the most part, things were pretty good. We had the one location where you were at where we have these electronic registration books, and they're basically iPads, and one of the iPads failed at that location, so they had to go back to the paper books where you flip through and find names when people come in to vote. Other than that, everything went pretty smoothly, so that probably took that group an extra, I don't know, half hour, 45 minutes or so to get through everything, and then they have to go back and reconcile because some of the names that came in the morning were in the Badger book, the electronic iPad, and the other ones were on paper, so they have to go through and make sure everything balances, and the clerk is still working on that so they can ultimately certify the results.
What was the percent, or you get into that, the percentage?
I'm trying to. She didn't give me the actual percent yet, so I'm going back and forth with her this morning. We'll see if she actually sends me that. If not, I'll have it next month. So, you know, after the election's done, she still has to get things ready for the city council meeting next week. And we, as a group, we help her put the documents in a folder, but she still has to go through and get it all organized and get that sent out by today. But in summary, this is what we have for the different districts. But I don't know what percentage it was overall, but I'll find that out for our next meeting here. But you can see that most of the districts had about 2,000 people, and over half of them were early voters. So you could have your ballot mailed out, which many people did, and dropped off at City Hall, through in the mailbox or through in the drive-through drop box over at City Hall. Or you could come in the week before the election and vote early in person at City Hall. And you can see that seems to be the preferred method right now. It's just more convenient for people. I know they were open at City Hall for walk-in early votes on Saturday, and they had over 100 people come in on that Saturday, so that was pretty good. In the past, it's only been, you know, a handful or 2, so it was well worth it being there that day. As far as the results, these are Dane County results. I know they're hard to see, but if you Google Dane County elections, you can actually go through and get the results for every race in Dane County and going back several years. So if you're really like a geek like I am, you can go through all the presidential elections and see if there's any patterns. And there certainly are. You know, Dane County typically votes blue, heavily blue in Dayton County. But you can actually go back and look at the number of votes and see, for example, and I haven't done that this year, but see how many votes Harris got this year compared to Biden, 4 years ago, or compared to Obama when he was running, and also do go back, for the last 3 elections and see, how Trump did. And you can do that for any candidates, and if you do, I think you'll see some patterns. The one that was most obvious to me is when Hillary Clinton ran. In Dane County, there was a strong turnout for third party, and if you look at the total votes that year for Dane County, it was also down. So that was really the combination statewide that I think did her in, is between the third party vote and just a lot of people that normally voted blue did not vote. And if you compare that to the red team, they were really consistent on how many people voted, whether it was a presidential or a Senate or the House of Representative race. It's really interesting. At one point I was so geeky I had it all on a spreadsheet, but I don't have time for that anymore. But if that's something you like to do, all the data is there for Dane County. So you can see in Dane County, basically all the blue candidates got about 75% of the vote, and the red candidates got 23 or 24%, which is, I think, fairly consistent. I didn't copy and paste the third parties. It just really wasn't that much this year as compared to previous years. And then we also had a state referendum where they changed one word on the Constitution. And in Dane County, it was voted no, but statewide, it was successful. And it had to do with being able to be, certify that you're a legal citizen in order to vote, which really you had to be anyway, because you had to show ID. So I don't really think there's going to be that much to do with it. I think it was more symbolic than anything. And then we had the Dane County executive race, and State Senator Agard won that race, so she'd be the new county executive. So what's going on there is they have an interim county executive right now. Joe Parisi retired. Jamie Keene is the interim. And then Agard won the primary and won the general election. Well, the way it all plays out is that term was up in April anyway, so she'll have to run again in April. Which, I haven't talked to the former county executive, but if I did, I would tell him how displeased I am with that, because that's not really a cool thing to do. There was no reason for that to happen. Just as far as I know, he didn't retire because of a health reason, and the timing of that just was weird. But it is what it is. So it'll be interesting to see if there'll be a competitive race again in April, or another primary even in February for the county executive race. So we'll wait and see. Our new representatives at the state level will be Randy Udell. He's from Fitchburg. So with the new maps, Randy will be taking the position that Jenna Jacobson was in for a short time because of the lawsuits and all that. And then the state senator, Melissa Radcliffe from Cottage Grove, will be taking the position that Mark Spreitzer has been in the last couple of years. So hopefully the maps won't change and we'll finally get some stability. I mean, the good news with Stoughton is we've had a number of state representatives the past few years because of retirements and redistricting, and we have good relationships with all of them. So we actually have more voices at the state level than we would have anyway. And that's going to be really important when we start talking about funding for municipalities and school districts. I'm going to look one last time to see if we got any more emails from the clerk before I move on here. And I did not. So I'll move on to the next thing, which is the budget. So
I was just going to say,
go ahead.
Having been through most of that day as an election inspector, I was very impressed with how many new registrations there were. I mean, I don't know what the numbers are, but a lot of people registered for the first time. Hopefully they'll keep voting.
So I'll try to bring that information at the next meeting too. One of the things she did mention is, in the email I received a little while ago, is they have like up to 30 days to go through this whole certification thing. And if you want to check your vote, you can do that. And you go to, let me share this right here. You can go to, I think it's My Vote, isn't it?
Yeah, my vote.
Yeah, you go to My Vote and you can see whether or not yours has been entered yet. We anticipate there could be a recount because of the Tammy Baldwin, Eric Hovey race was less than 1%. We haven't received official word yet that I'm aware of, so that could happen. And then they also do random audits on the elections, and we don't believe we were picked this year. We're still waiting for confirmation on that. We have in the past where they just randomly audit to make sure everything's in order. So they have good processes in place, and those that have worked the polls can kind of see firsthand how it works. So on Tuesday night, we're going to be going through the budget, and this is kind of the breakdown of the budget right here. So you can see this is what we're requesting. We have two parts to the budget. We have our operational, which is really controlled by the state spending limits, and we can only raise that number from year to year based on our growth. And that number for the 2025 budget year, starting January 1st, is we can raise our taxes by a total of $130,000. And what the state has done is they created this formula 13 years ago to encourage communities to grow. And the idea is when you grow, it spreads out your tax base. So based on that formula, you should be able to take that new tax base and raise your taxes by your percentage of growth to cover your rising costs. Well, I can tell you it doesn't work, because our health insurance premiums alone were $178,000. So then when we're trying to give employees a raise so we can keep our employees working here, which we put in 3% this year, which is below the cost of living. And then all our other expenses go up. Our building insurance and our vehicle insurance went up like 30%. Our utilities cost goes up, just like yours goes up at home. Cost of materials to maintain our buildings go up. Those are all things that are in our operations budget. The second part of the budget is the debt service tax levy. And what that is that's the money we borrow. So for new vehicles, new buildings, for equipment, we typically purchase bonds. We can do notes, but usually we do 10 or 20-year bonds. And then what we do is, based on how much money we borrowed, we have to pay that back. And we pay it back through the debt service tax levy. And that went up significantly because we've been doing a lot of projects the last several years, and the cost of doing those projects continue to go up. So those are buildings, there are vehicles, there's roads, and we do what we can to keep those costs down. We partner with Stoughton Utilities on our major projects, so when we do a road, you know, they won't come back a couple of years later and tear it up again to do their utilities work. We try to bid things together so we can get better pricing on larger projects. Some of the things, the smaller projects, we actually purchased equipment last year to do our own grinding of the asphalt, so then we only have to pay the paving company to come in and put in the pavement. So we've done a lot of things over the years to try to help us with our operational, using technology and equipment, but we tend to have to borrow for that stuff. So our borrowing went up significantly the last several years. But we're only at about 2.5% of our property value is borrowing. The state allows you to borrow up to 5% of that, and we have a local policy that's 4%, so we still have plenty of room to borrow, but you know, we don't want to push the limit on that. We want to pay our debt back, and we do it fairly aggressively. And when we do our bond ratings through Moody's for our loans or our bonds, That's one of the things they say. They know that, yeah, you borrow a lot of money, but you're also paying it back aggressively. And unfortunately, that lands on, the debt service tax levy. Equalized values, the property values, so you can see that that's for the TID districts that went up a little bit. The mill rate increased 5%, and then the home value went up, so then the property taxes are going up, and it's on about a $300,000 house, it's going to be a couple hundred dollars. And then also the school districts is going up as well because of the referendums. So property taxes will be going up, which is unfortunate, but the mill rate has been going down for several years because the mill rate is based on our operational tax levy. And since we have the state spending limits in there, it helps control the mill rate. But with the property values going up as much as they have the last several years, and then the debt service going up for us, and then the referendums for the school district, the property taxes will be going up. That's the bottom
So I
line.
have a question. So that property tax, that's really small compared to that meeting. Is that half the property tax?
This is just the city portion.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't include
Okay.
the school district or the county
It's not
or
relative.
Madison College.
Okay.
So there's 4 taxing entities.
It's not all the other items.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so the city mill rate is about, what was it? $6 and some odd cents per thousand, and then the school district's about that much, and then you add in the county, and then Madison College, and you're right around 16-17%.
How long are the community bonds for when you issue bonds?
They're usually 10 or 20 years. It depends on the project. What we try to do is, if it's something that's going to last 20 years, we'll borrow for the 20 years and spread that out, but then you pay more interest, and of course the interest rates have gone up. We don't want to borrow for something that for 20 years that's only going to last 10, because then you're going to have to borrow again and you haven't even paid the first one off. Yeah, and really what's been happening in a lot of places, some of the smaller purchases, which should be paid out of the operational tax levy, some of it's getting borrowed for now because we simply don't have the cash to do it. And this has been my argument to the state, is we're using our credit card, which is our borrowing, for things we should be paying cash for, which is our property tax, because we have to be able to provide services. So on things like computers and that, and certain things, we should probably be paying for it out of operational money, but a lot of communities have been paying it out of a debt service. And it would be better in the long haul for the taxpayers to pay for it with cash than on a credit card, because then they're not paying interest. But just like at home, if you don't have enough cash, you borrow to put your roof on your house. It's kind of the same thing.
Maybe instead of some of the things being paid more aggressively, maybe some of those dollars could go like on some of that.
Yeah, and what we try to do also is every year we look to see if we can refinance some of our previous stuff. But with the interest rates going up right now, there's no incentive to do that, because some of the things we borrowed for, we only paid 2 to 3% interest versus 5% if we borrow now. So we work with our finance department and our department heads, and then we have our financial consultants, Ellers, goes through and helps us with our modeling. And what we try to do is we try to have a consistent amount of borrowing, so we don't have these big spikes. You're going to have that periodically, like when we built the Public Works garage. That was it was between $8 and $9 million to build that, so we had a big borrow. So then at the point where that's going to drop off, maybe we'll borrow for a bigger project. Then we try not to overlap them as much as we can. So we try to keep that as steady as we can, so we can have a consistent amount of payback for that debt service. But yeah, it does add up. But the last several years, it hasn't been that bad. It's just kind of been the perfect storm here, and we'll see how it goes. And we put together a 5-year plan, so hopefully in the next few years it won't be that high, although we have a couple fire trucks that are getting toward the end of their life, and those are Fire trucks, some of them are going like for $2 million right now, and it takes like forever to get them. So some of them we've already have ordered, even though we know we won't get them for 3 years. So we put a deposit down to get them in the queue so they can get built, and then when they come in, you know, we'll have to pay off the balance. So those would be big ticket items. So this is our operations. This is the part where I call the cash, the property tax portion of it, and you can see that the largest portion, 41%, is for our police department. So that's where we spend most of your property tax dollars, and it's broken down public works, and then you know, some of the other ones are smaller, about 5 to 7%. You know, finance and human resources, and then you have senior center is 5%, IT is 5%, and then all other activities would be like the park and rec department, and the clerk's department, and some of the smaller departments like that. But you can see the majority of it is on the PD. And then this is that new construction I described. So you can see that this chart here shows by the year and how much we grew. So this was put in about 2012, and we grew at 0.35%. This year was our record year. We grew at 3.5%. So the last 3 years have been our highest amount of growth. And when I say that, that would include like commercial buildings and residential buildings. So a big chunk this year was the Emmy Roth building. That was one of the reasons. That was like a $35 million building. And then when the Stoughton Trailers building is done, that one will show up in a couple of years. And usually what happens is the buildings or the homes will get built, and then on January 1st, the assessor will determine what the value is, and then you don't actually collect that property tax until the next year. So there's typically a 2-year lag between the time something is built and we actually start getting the revenue. And that's one of the reasons why the formula doesn't work, because we have to provide services before we start getting the money. So we have to, you know, where Emmy Roth is, we have to plow the road before anything is built. Where the houses are going up, we have to plow some of the roads. Some of them we actually barricade so we don't have to plow them if there's no lots being built on them yet. So we work with the developers to try to minimize our costs in doing the snow plowing or park maintenance or whatever it would be. But that's what happens. We have to provide services before we get the money. So we're already behind before we get started. And with the spending limits and the cost of everything going up, we weren't able to hire any new positions this year out of our operations money. We are hiring somebody for EMS fire, but that's being paid for out of the EMS budget, which is not part of the property tax. Their budget is paid for through the collections from insurance companies and individuals that use the EMS service. So that's the only position we hired this year. So you can see with the net new construction, you know, this is the additional money we get, and it doesn't cover our cost of health insurance alone. Now, this number looks really low this year because you can see how much we grew, and it's less than last year. So we had a meeting with the Department of Revenue to understand what happened. And there was a change in state law that kicked in. And what happened is if you had a business and you had equipment, you had to pay personal property tax on that equipment. Well, the state changed the law, so businesses no longer have to pay that personal property tax. So what they did is they reimbursed our share of that amount in a different line, but by doing that on the worksheet, it reduced that number. That number would have been $254,000. So the other $120,000 we got credited on another line, so that's why that just doesn't look right. So we questioned that. We sat down with the DOR to figure out the method to the madness, and I mean, they made us whole, but it really distorts the number. So that's kind of what it is. And now that we're kind of at a new base, next year it'll look normal again. I'm expecting the growth next year to probably be somewhere between 2024 and 2023, if I were to guess off the top of my head. I don't think we'll repeat 2025 next year, maybe the following year. We'll see what happens. But you can see in Dane County, we're kind of in the middle of the pack, so we grew actually more than Sun Prairie and Fitchburg and Madison and Middleton, but most of the growth occurred like in Verona because of Epic, when they put up a building that's millions of dollars. And then these places like Verona and Cottage Grove and Windsor and Wanakee and Westport, those are all communities that have really good access to the interstate, and they're seeing a higher level of growth than maybe what we call a secondary city, because we're basically Madison, McFarland, Stoughton. So we're two communities off a major highway or even off the interstate. So we did pretty well. I mean, typically in the past, we've been right about the state average, which is about 1.3%, I think it is. So we're well above that now, and we have been for the last several years, but we're still below. Until the last couple of years, we've still been below the county average. So we're starting to get our share of growth here in Stoughton. And it's not only important for our budget, but it's also important for the school's budget, because when you grow, it brings more students in, and that's one of the factors in their funding is the number of students. So here's what's going on in other communities because of the lack of the ability to spend more operational funds. They're going to referendum because their costs have gone up. So Monona's passed, Fitchburg's failed, Madison passed 3 referendums, 1 for the city and 2 for the school district, and then Middleton's passed. And then we're hearing that next year Oregon's going to go to referendum. Fitchburg will probably go back for another one. Cottage Grove, they want to put in a library. And then Sun Prairie put in a wheel tax for next year. So each vehicle will have to pay $30. So that's what they're doing, to put a Band-Aid on theirs. But ultimately, all the communities right now, unless something changes at the state level, we'll be going to referendum. We feel like we can get through the next couple of years without it. So what we did this year is we ended up with about, I think it was about $130,000 in the red on our budget. But we have a strong rainy day fund, and that's money that is accumulated over the years, typically from employment gaps. So somebody leaves the city, maybe it takes a month or 2 to get them replaced, so you've saved that money during that transition, and that builds up the rainy day fund. So what we have proposed for the budget is to use up to the 130,000-ish to balance the budget for next year instead of going to referendum. And then I believe we can do that again in 2026. And if something doesn't change by 2027, we might be looking at referendum here in Stoughton. We're already looking at things, and health insurance is a big cost. We do have a good plan. So we're looking at, options and tweaking that plan to try to at least level out the costs, because it keeps going up. It went up 9.9% for our health insurance costs. That's where that $178,000 came from, which is actually pretty good. We started at about 12.9%. So we negotiated the insurance company down 3%, which saved about $50,000. All right, let's get into the fun stuff, because the budget's depressing. So we're working with Stoughton Trailers right now. This is where their headquarters will be, and they have a proposal to go through the process of zoning and platting the property. So the zoning, basically the color codes here tells you what they can do on those lots, and then the platting helps to establish where the lots are going to be. And then we do a certified survey map, which really gets down to the detail about the size and shapes of the lots. And then we have ordinances in place that determine, like on the residential lots, how much setbacks they need to have on the side, front and back. and things like that. And then we work with them on the size of the roads. So we were at the Planning Commission about a month ago, and there were 3 things that the Planning Commission members were, the commissioners were concerned about. One of them was this lot here. It just felt like a strange place to put apartments. So what we've done is we're in the process of updating our zoning code. As part of the zoning code, it gives them more flexibility. So they could do apartments there up to a certain amount. I can't remember if it was, I'm gonna say it's 16 or whatever it is there on this small lot here. If they put multifamily there, they could do that. They could also do duplexes there. And then in our zoning code, they'll tell you how many total units they can have. So we're concerned that we don't think the apartments fits there very good, but the way the zoning is they'll have flexibility to do all 3. It's just a total number of units. So the market will ultimately decide that, whoever decides to buy that piece of land from Stoughton Trailers and build it. So that was one thing we worked on. The other thing we worked on is on the roads here, you can see we're extending current roads, Creedman, Kings Lynn, Oak Ridge. They put in a couple of cul-de-sacs. We were a little concerned about this cul-de-sac here. We kind of wanted it to go through, kind of like Kings Lynn and Creedman does. They don't really want to do that because there would be additional costs for sewer, water, and the pavement. I'm not sure if we're going to require them to put sidewalks in these cul-de-sacs or not. We haven't got that far yet. We wanted them to go through, and they're like, oh, that'll be kind of a hardship because we didn't budget for it or whatever. So our concern was for emergency management, for snow storage, and for a lift station that's going to be here. So what we are proposing now is that we have a 12-foot road going through here that would be barricaded, but we could get through for emergency management, and we could get through to service the lift station, which we can also do from Greenbrier here. And then they're gonna have a sliver of land available there for the snow. Otherwise, the snow, well, it's really not very good on this map, but the snow would have to come all the way basically out to here to get rid of it, which is not a very efficient way for us to remove snow. So when we're working with developers, those are the things we're trying to do to keep down our costs and our labor for snow removal or for park maintenance, or we want to make sure that the fire trucks can get it out of there efficiently. So we think we've got these 2 resolved. The third one is up here. These are going to be duplexes, and there's a road here that loops all the way around, and what they propose is they'd have a 0 lot line, so they'd have a driveway, 2 driveways per lot here, one for each unit. And what we're proposing is that they just have one big driveway that serves each duplex, so you wouldn't have all these curb cuts there. And we think it'll be safer, then you won't have as many people trying to back out of the driveway at the same time, you know, onto this road. And they just sent us a proposal this morning where they want to add 1 more lot here, and that's what we're going to talk about Monday night, because they have minimum street frontages that they have to meet. And if they add another lot here, they won't be able to do the 0 lot line duplexes, they'd have to do condos. And we're trying to explain that to them, which might be more difficult for them to sell the lots. And I think they're trying to add another lot so they can make more money. Well, that might be true, but the downside maybe is they might not be able to make that money as quickly because it might take longer and it costs more to hang on the property than it does to sell it. So those are the things that we're working on. They were at the city council a month ago, and based on those 3 concerns that we raised, the council did not take any action on it. So we're going to go through that process again next week, and we'll see how it goes.
So you say you have all
Is
the
this
garages
available somewhere
on the
for
backside?
public viewing?
Yeah, so this information will be in the Planning Commission packet, which you can find on our website.
Okay.
and in the city council packet, because they're gonna be at both meetings next week. And then you had a question here?
Yeah, you know how they have a lot of like garages on the back side now where people enter on one road on the back and they're all on the back of the housing? Then they wouldn't be entering and backing out on B.
Well, they're not gonna, this isn't B. B, this is, I don't know why they call it row B.
Oh.
Highway B is actually up here.
Oh, that's
Yeah, right
not
there.
highway B,
Yeah.
okay.
But we did talk about that, and the concern was, well, we have the pond in the way, and then there's also homes here that are facing B, and we're concerned that the homeowners there wouldn't want people pulling in basically in their backyards. So this is how they designed it. I don't know, we'll see how it goes.
I got the dumpster right across from me, and the lights are in my window all the time.
Yeah, it's no
On my grand
fun.
beer and across from
What are they working on?
the church here. Oh, their dumpster is there all the time. That's their maintenance.
Oh.
Right across from my house, and I'm sitting here and the lights are always right.
Yeah, so we try to,
They didn't ask us when they moved in.
no,
when they put
and those are the
garbage
types
in.
of things that we're trying to take into consideration on
Yeah,
these
it
new
is
developments. It is. Kettle Park West is the other one we're working on. So we have a builder that wants to purchase all these alley lots, which I've talked about in the past. And the reason this is in here again is that right now, these lots here, we have a restriction on the deed that says they cannot build these lots until this road is extended going down toward Highway 138. And then at some point, the understanding was the city would make a connection to 138, either right in, right out, or roundabout, or whatever it would be. So we put a deed restriction on here to give the developers an incentive to get this road done at their cost. Well, the builder here is Lennar, and they've been building all of these here, and they're getting to the point where they want to build these homes, so they want us to lift the deed restriction. Well, we don't really want to do that because that's our leverage to get this road done. So we're going to talk about that Tuesday night as well, about some different options. What they proposed was, well, can you just move the deed restriction from these units down to these? I don't think that's going to fly because when they do these, they have to do the road anyway. And the council wanted the road done sooner than later. Now, the rationale at the time was, we want to get the road done because at the time these were starting to be built, the only access we had for emergency management was on Jackson Street. And the idea was, as well, if we get the road done, they could use this as a second way to get in there for fire, EMS, police, whatever. But since then, with 51 West being developed, doesn't show up on this map. That one either. Anyway, Oak Opening goes all the way up here and it connects at Roby now and at Rutland Downtown Line Road. So we actually have added 2 more ways to enter this development. They're a little further away from the downtown to get there, but we still have 3 options to get in there now. Do we really need the 4th one? So far, the council says, yes, we still want the 4th one, but they haven't seen the cost of doing that connection yet. It'll probably be $2 to $3 million, so they may change their mind. So we're having conversations with the developer, and actually when I'm done here, I need to call them to figure out what our options are. What I'm proposing is, I don't think this is gonna fly, but maybe we can split the difference here and say, well, we'll let you build on these 4, but not the other 4 until you get the road done. That's what I'm gonna propose. Now, whether or not the developer will agree to that and the council will agree to that remains to be seen. I don't get a vote unless it's a tie vote at city council. But, so we're trying to work with them, but these things are complicated because, you know, there's reasons things happen and they have a new team with the developers and they don't know all the history. So they're like, oh, what's the big deal? Well, the city council 5 years ago spent a lot of time putting that restriction into place and working to do that, to encourage this road to be done. They're not just gonna say, oh, never mind now. That's not really how it works. So we'll see what happens. These are the homes that they're building. I've showed them to you before. We did meet with these guys, and these are the ones that would go into these alley lots. And we met them the other day. They're starting to talk about having more single family than the twin homes. These are the 0 lot line twin homes, so the lot line is literally right here. And then they each have a separate meter that's in there. So what they're talking about is doing more single families and duplexes than they initially planned, because they're seeing what's going on in the market right now. People would rather have a little bit more privacy. So I think that's actually a good thing, and the value will be higher too, because a single family home will sell more than a half a duplex will. So we're trying to figure out a way to do that, because originally the lots were platted for single family, then we replatted them, most of them, not all of them, for duplexes. Now they want the flexibility to do either or, so we have our attorney trying to figure out if we need to replat those lots again, or if there's a way that city council can give us authorization to do that on the fly. I don't have an answer yet. So that's what they're building. Man Park is coming along pretty nicely. I don't know, has anybody been down there now that the road's open? And we think we got the traffic thing figured out, because Main Street was backing up. So what happened, and we didn't find this out until like when they were done constructing, is at stoplights underground we have what we call loops, and the loops are like, I'm going to say they're like metal detectors, and they can detect when there's cars there, and it helps the lights know when to turn red and green. Well, apparently there's 2 of them down by 4th Street, and the contractors cut one of the lines, and we didn't know it. So that's why the cars were getting backed up. Well, we've now discovered that, and we haven't repaired the line yet, but we're able to adjust the second one to hopefully get back to how it was for the downtown traffic. So especially on Friday afternoons, we're like, why is the line so long here? Well, that's what happened. We have a lot of issues with contractors cutting lines. Usually it's the internet or power, or sometimes gas, but not too often it's a loop. So that's what happened there. But anyway, now that the road's open, you can drive down 4th Street, and then they're starting to get ready to pave the new road going around it. The grandstands, they have the pillars all poured, and they just have to basically line up the grandstand, mark the holes, move the grandstand, drill the holes, put the anchors in, move it back, and bolt it all together. And then there's going to be the cement for the curbs are in for the new parking spaces that are going to be here, and it's going to flow really nice. This part here is scheduled to be done in the spring, as well as the new walking trail. And then, so they'll work on finishing all this inside stuff up here. Hopefully the weather holds up. Right now, they've been ahead of schedule, so hopefully that keeps going. And there's the grandstand. That was when they lifted it up. Now it's turned, and so it'll be parallel with the Mann Center, if you can see on the picture. On the old picture, it was kind of like this. So by moving it, we're gaining this whole corner here for use from the grandstands. And then we also think that there's a possibility that this area out here, when it's not being used for the fair, that maybe the soccer teams can use it for practice or for games on there, because we don't have enough soccer fields right now. So we're looking at that as well. The river, we're still working with the DNR. We do have one permit that we've approved recently. It does have some conditions, and that's the permit that would allow basically the trail to go under the culvert, under the bridge. But we do have a process now, which is only taken us 5 years to get to. But it's all laid out here, so what we have to do in the future. So we would be applying for another permit for this structure here. So we have this is called a reflector, and we have another one we're going to put in here, and then we have this what we've been calling a miscellaneous structure, and the DNR wants to call it a dam, because by their definition, it's diverting and holding back water, basically. And we're going back and forth to really understand their definition and what that means. And once we sort that out here, hopefully sooner than later, we can submit this application. And we'd like to do this work in the spring when we're doing this trail work at Mann Park. And one of the issues that we have too is we have to do some testing of the soil here. There was some contamination that was discovered when we were doing some engineering. We think some of it is from the old site that was there even before the Public Works garage. And the issue is they have to do some samples down here and over here, and the boat that they use is too tall to fit under the new pedestrian bridge. So we're trying to figure out if they can get on this side from Mann Park. And the companies that do the remediation and the contamination also work with the DNR, and they are extremely backed up. That company has 4 projects in Stoughton alone. So we're seeing that, you know, those are the types of things that are beyond our control that are delaying the projects. So the idea would be to get these downstream permits done next spring ideally, realistically. Who knows, maybe next fall if we're lucky. And then once those are approved, then we would have a deeper conversation about the dam itself. And then the dam itself, there's a separate permit that's required because we would be asking them to change the water level. There's a water level order from the 1980s in place. And we have to be able to demonstrate why we believe it's in the public interest to change the water level order. And we believe it will be because it'll be better water quality for the river. There'll be more fishing opportunities because the fish would be able to get upstream. The recreational use we think will be increased for people that, you know, not only fish, but maybe if they want to kayak or if they want to tube or canoe or whatever. And I'm sure there'll be some that'll argue it's not for the public interest because the water level they believe will affect some of their use. So ultimately, the DNR will have to make that determination. And we do have some engineering that I would imagine that once we get the downstream permits approved, that they'll probably be doing some additional projections. They have some modeling that they use. The current ones show that during the spring and fall, when typically we would be using the river, you probably wouldn't use it so much from November now until spring, and eventually it'll be frozen all winter. But during the normal 380 flow, 380 cubic feet per second, that when you get up to Highway B, the water level will drop 0.3 feet, which is 3 to 4 inches. So it'll drop about that much. So those that are opposed to it are going to say, you know, that's against the public interest because for whatever reason we don't think, you know, we'll be able to do this, that, or the other thing. So that's what the argument will ultimately be about. So we'll see what happens. We do have money in the budget to pay for all this. Initially, it was like a $2 million project. Now it's probably closer to $3 million because of the delays over that 20-year bond. We haven't borrowed that money yet, so if things don't line up, the money that we showed in there won't actually get borrowed for, so the debt service part will go down, but it won't go up because we have enough in there to cover the cost of doing the project.
But the plan is the same plan for what you want to use it for?
Yeah.
That didn't change?
Nope, the plan's pretty much the same. And then, you know, so, I mean, those are big initiatives. When you have that, and you have the, you know, the Mann Park initiative, that's like a $3 million initiative. Those are big expenses, but we haven't invested any money into this park for decades. and we need to redo the parking lot anyway, so you might as well do it right. But that's what drives up your borrowing costs, that and the aggressive upgrades we've made on our roads and on our trails and in our parks. Those are all really expensive endeavors.
Off topic, but I just thought about it when you said about the trails, because we've been really enjoying the new trails in town with biking. I had heard that maybe they would go under 51.
Yeah, so as part of the project, well, I'm kind of getting to it now. So the DOT is going to be doing this corridor project starting next year. So next year's section will be from 5th Street to Spring Road, going that way. In 2026, they're going to start at Harrison, which is right here, and they're going to go all the way up past B. So when they do the work in 2026, they're going to put a roundabout at Rutland Dunn Town Line Road, which, do I have it in here? Maybe I don't. I do. They're going to put a roundabout here, and they're going to put a roundabout at B, and then somewhere in this area here is where they're going to put the underpass that you just mentioned. So then that underpass will, they've got it down here where the dotted line is, I think. So that there'll be a trail that'll come in here, and you can get through the park, and it'll go all the way over by between the church and Sand Hill, somewhere over there. And if you keep going, eventually you'll get to the point that'll connect you to the lower Yahara River Trail, which goes all the way to Madison. This portion from Stoughton to Fish Camp Road, the Fish Camp part is done over to the park, Lake Eganza Park. So the part from Stoughton to Lake Eganza Park, we're not sure when that's going to be completed. I'm hoping in the next 5 years as a county initiative. So that trail will get you all the way through here, under the underpass. We'll connect you to the stuff on the west side, which hasn't been built yet, and bring you all the way in through these trails here. So it'll all connect. All the way down, heading basically as close as we can get to Nordic Ridge is the plan. So when we're doing the developments, we work with the developers to make sure that all the trails are aligning, because we'd like to be able to have all the parks connected too. So that's all part of the planning process. So you don't have these trails to nowhere like we've had in the past. And then we try to infill whenever we can. There's state laws that limits what we can do for infilling. We have to have willing sellers of the property. So to recap your question, that underpass will be done as part of this, because they're going to have the highway closed anyway, and we have money budgeted for our portion of that, but a lot of that's going to be paid for through the tax incremental financing from Bob Dvorak's 51 West development and from the Stone Trailers development. So that's how most of that's going to be paid for. So we'll be borrowing for it, but it'll be paid back through the tax incremental financing. So there won't be any impact for that trail to the taxpayers, which is good news. So when they do the project in 2026, when I mentioned from Harrison to B, the stretch from Harrison to Kingsland, this here, right now we have 4 lanes. What they're going to do is they're going to have 2 lanes, and they're going to have a middle lane for left-hand turns, and they call them twiddles. So that's already been approved by the city council and by the DOT. You have to be within the traffic counts outlined in their policies in order to do that. We'll have to adjust the lights again, but we think it'll be safer, because then the left turn lane will be there coming both ways. Everything else is going straight. So hopefully that'll work out. Now, if it doesn't work out, the road would be wide enough where we could go back to the 4 lanes if it doesn't work out. But we're going to try it and see what happens. So that will be also done in 2026. That'll be converted. they may even do some of that beforehand. We met with them the other day. We talked quarterly with the DOT, and they talked about maybe implementing that middle turn lane even before they do the renovation to the highway. We'll see what happens. That's that. And then as part of that, we're going to have 10-foot sidewalks going all the way up Main Street, all the way up to County B. So usually you put in like a 5-foot sidewalk. The city is going to use the TIF money to pay to have them widened to a 10-foot. That way if people want to bicycle or walk it as a trail, they could do either or and try to keep the bicycles off the highways as much as we can. And then this is kind of what it looks like when the road's done the twiddle. So you can see you have the 2 lanes and then the middle turn lane, and then you have your green space, we call them terraces here, and then you have typically you have the 5-foot sidewalks. Once you get up further, they're going to be converted to the 10-foot sidewalks. That's kind of the layout.
When is that proposed to be implemented?
2026. Yeah, and then this is what it'll look like as you get up further with the 10-foot sidewalk. It's going to be 10-foot on the one side at Jurtson Street, on the west side, and then 5-foot on this side. So, and then we'll have some lighting, and this is kind of what it'll look like as you get up, toward the roundabouts. There's a public hearing on this next Tuesday night at 5 o'clock at the Public Works Building. The DOT will be there, so that's why I threw these slides in. We're going to fix the intersection at Jackson where the double lights are by the Hulse Road there. That'll be a right in, right out. This is what it'll look like. So we're going to put in, they call these pork chops, I think. They're going to reroute the sidewalk. So if you're going in, you can go in this way, but when you come out, you have to come out this way. You will not be able to go left into here. So if you're at Walmart and you come out, you won't be able to get in there. You'll have to somehow go down, turn around, and come back in. So if you're going to the garden center, you want to go there first before you go to Walmart. But we think it'll clean up this intersection. It's also going to get rid of that goofy, when you come this way and you have to almost take a hard left to get into the turn lane to get into Walmart. That's all going to be fixed. They should have never designed it that way to begin with. I don't know what they were drinking that day, but wasn't good.
They had pizza.
They had pizza. They had the pizza. So that's going to be cleaned up in 2026 as well. And then this is just more pictures of it to give you, a better idea. So they won't be able to turn out here. They have to go this way. But you can see coming across Jackson, it'll be nice and smooth now instead of this jerk over here to get into Walmart. And then you'll be able to go up to the light, and you'll have a left turn lane to get over here, and then you'll either go straight or you'll go right here. But you'll be able to go right on right here now, I believe, which will be better. And this kind of outlines the construction, like I said, 2026. And this is, I don't know why I have this in here. This is B and AB, that's all done now. And then if you wanted to get more information from the DOT, you can go to the website or you can scan this with your phone. We put a new sign up over by City Hall. I don't know if anybody saw it yet. This was something that the Historical Society worked on with the Public Works. It's right before you get to the post office, facing the road. So one side has the downtown history of Stoughton, and the other side, as you're coming from the parking lot, just says "Welcome to Stoughton." They figured they might as well put something on the back, so that's what they came up with. A couple new businesses, new acupuncture place here in Stoughton, Silverado. There's a bunch of different businesses in that building out there. Across from UW Health, or is that UW Health there? Wherever that clinic is there. New bookstore right over here, just opened up on the corner here. Got a lot of books in there, I was surprised. I was in there during the Halloween trick-or-treat day. Stoughton Dance, I was there yesterday. That's over at the Castle Condominiums in that lower unit there. They have a section of the unit, and what they do is they, some of the students that they have are the ones that do the high school football games, the dance team, if you've ever been to a football game. And then they do kids as well, so they teach them how to dance out there. So they just opened up there in a section of that building there, which is nice. The business that was there, the Stoughton Center for the Arts, they moved out into a bigger building in the business park. So they filled up some space that was really already being used for dance and acting and music lessons. Kicks Unlimited has changed their name to Inspire Martial Arts, so that's kind of a new one. We still have the behavioral health resource down here for a couple more months here. And then we still have the music appreciation going on for 2 more weeks at the Opera House. And that's all I had.
When did you say those 2 new roundabouts will be constructed?
2026.
26.
Yeah. So that'll be, the highway's gonna be a mess. And then we still don't have a firm date for the downtown. It's gonna be sometime between 2027 and 2029, and that's really dependent on the federal funding. And there again, with the new administration, we're not really sure what was gonna happen. They were suggesting it was gonna be 2027, but all bets are off. It'll get done eventually. It'll be really difficult for the business owners. They already been meeting with the chamber and with Public Works to set up some local detours. And one of our strategies has been, is to get 4th Street done, East South Street done. We did Milwaukee Street last year. Those are all streets that we know will be detours. So we've been trying to get those roads in better shape to accommodate additional traffic flow in anticipation of this project. And these projects are expensive. The DOT pays for the majority of it, but there's certain things that we have to pay for. We have to pay a percentage of the engineering. We have to pay for some of the upgrades and changes for, you know, lighting and signage and things like that. But, you know, as long as we're doing the project, now is the time to do that. But all that contributes to our debt, but it also makes our community safer and more attractive, which is something that we've been trying to do. And we believe that investment is one of the reasons why we're growing the way we are. And in one of my other presentations that I'm doing with Leadership Stoughton, I actually found a slide from the school district from, I think it was from last year. And they have a team from the UW come in and they project out how many students they're gonna have. And they were projecting for this year to have 2,500 students. And even though our student count went down like 30-some students this year, we're over 2,700 students. So I'm encouraged that we've at least helped stop the bleeding in the school district by having all these new homes going up. And what's odd about it though is it really hasn't changed our population that much. The census was done in 2020, so we gained like 500 people or whatever it was from 10 years ago. And then they projected after that, and then they calibrated every 10 years when they actually do the census. So our population was like at 13,000, then it went up to 13,200. Now it's just under 13,000 again. So even though we had all these new homes go up, the number of people here is pretty stagnant, and it's because families aren't as big as they were. So the new families coming in may only be 2 or 3 people, and the ones that have moved out or whatever have been maybe 4 or 5 people. So it's really kind of an interesting thing that we have this aging population. And Stoughton's always, you know, been a place for, you know, seniors, and we'll continue to provide the services that the seniors need. So, and this building is an example of that. So, but we're trying to do things that will accommodate anybody that wants to live in Stoughton. And housing's a big one right now. I'm going to be on this panel coming up in what's happened is, and one of the slides that I've been working on is, back in 2000, in the county, we were building about 1,500 units a year. So that's single-family homes, duplexes, and apartments. 1,500 building permits a year. And then during COVID, we were down to like 500 a year. And now we're at about 750 a year. So we're still not at the same level we were in 2000. And so we lost 20 years of housing that didn't get built, but our population in Dane County has grown over them 20 years. So that's why we have this huge shortage, and that's why, you know, all the builders want to build in all the communities right now, and Stoughton is certainly getting our share. So we'll see how it plays out. We anticipate there'll be more people wanting to come to town. We're trying to be really strategic on how we accommodate their needs versus our needs, and see where it takes us. So any other questions today? All right, well, thanks again for being here. I appreciate you. I'm going to try to get some different people going up here. We have a new building inspector. She started Monday, so I'm going to try to get her at a future meeting. Steve Kittleson's been here forever. He's retiring at the end of the year, so we're fortunate to find somebody before he's done so we can have some overlap. And then I've also been talking to the postmaster. He said he'd be willing to come down here one day so he can pick his brain on the post office. So it's something a little different. So he used to work for us at Pizza Pit, so that's how I know him. Small world, right? And then if there's anybody else that you'd like to have down here, feel free to let me know. I'll be more than happy to invite them. We always enjoy being down here. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Yeah, I do.